technologies. Also on my end is going to be Ben Flint. He's going to be kind of jumping in and helping out. Most of you, if you haven't met me, you've met Ben. He's been out with Richard to a number of the locations and has a relationship with several of you now. What we're kind of looking to do today is just to kind of get us in the groove of using these kind of account manager meetings to continue to improve upon what you're doing day to day with ODT, and then get you to the point where you can start potentially taking advantage of some of the other tools and the functionality, the different reports and analytics that our application can provide once you've got a sound infrastructure for use and data compliance in our system. So it's really kind of a setting the table in terms of what success looks like inside our application, and then as we kind of move forward through the program over the next several meetings, over the next several months, we're going to get very granular from location to location, subsidiary to subsidiary, so we can start to dive in and help out where things are potentially a little bit unique, or you're maybe doing things a little bit differently than anybody else, or for the folks that just maybe need a little help, a little refresher, that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take you through what I'm going to call maybe the 15 or 20 minutes of understanding the bits and pieces of our application and what it looks like when it's kind of successfully driven, so that we have a place to start moving forward. So when we look at a given delivery or we look at a given order, we've got all of the components that make up successful data collection for that particular effort. So that I can go back through and show you, here was the customer, here was the times, the trucks, the people, everything that kind of went into that, so that we can roll up the information necessary to have the secondary deliverable. And then I want to, as we're doing that, I want to talk about some of the trip compliance tools that we have, because we've got some very good simple reports that can be run so that you can kind of highlight where you maybe had an issue, or if there was a data question that needs to be dealt with. We can show you where those things live inside our system, so that you can get better at kind of troubleshooting and correcting those before they happen. And then I also have this this ability within the application to show you the history of a given order. So I want to spend a little bit of time in the status history, not much time, because we can do that offline as well through support calls and other in other meetings. But the idea behind status history is if something happens or it doesn't look right to you, it gives you the opportunity to see what happened to that particular order. Who did what to it, when, where? Did it get drug off of a schedule? Did it, is it an order that went yesterday but didn't get delivered? Those kinds of things. So I want to show you what that status history looks like, because ultimately that's the main tool that we use from our side, from a troubleshooting and a support perspective, to kind of help better understand what might have happened from a user perspective with a given order. So I'll give you another kind of 10 minutes on status history, just real brief, to show you the kinds of ins and outs in that and what a successful trip looks like from a history perspective. And then I just want to hit the kind of keys for scheduling. I know the majority of the locations that I've looked at so far in the examinations that I've done, people tend to be living in drag and drop tools, particularly Truck Scheduler, and that's perfectly fine. But I want to understand what users get when they're using the Truck Scheduler and what potentially could be missing, or what kind of data components are being bypassed if we're strictly using the Truck Scheduler. I want to talk about the combine window and a tool that we have both from a multi-select and our Truck Scheduler tool as it relates to that combine window tool, which is really just kind of an ability to do a confirmation or make sure that you've got the key data elements in place before the effort starts. So before your truck's rolling out the yard, we've got everything we need to then let the GPS and the application take over from there. And then I'm going to move it over to Ben. Ben's going to spend some time on just a little bit of time again on the map rectify process, make sure everyone has a sound kind of understanding of the key components of rectifying addresses. Because I know across your company everybody's doing things a little bit differently in terms of how they're managing ship-to records, whether or not you're setting up ARSS records for every delivery point, or if you're using mains or specific job accounts and then delivering off of that. So you get a little better understanding of how we can make sure we can pick up all of those. And then the keys to look for in the application to make sure that you have compliance at a latitude and longitude perspective. And then the key for that, for anything related to map data or scheduling data, is just to try to do your best to stay that kind of one step ahead. Because if you're a step ahead of anything that's actually in place or moving, the application can take care of the rest of the data. So you give us a couple of kind of front-end key components, and then from that point forward, GPS and geofencing and those kind of tools can work and automate the rest of it. Once we're through with our little, kind of maybe 30 minutes of effort there, we're just going to open it up for questions. I'm going to keep all the lines open. So if anyone has questions, feel free to shoot them our direction kind of as I'm kind of going through some of this. We will kind of sum it all up and ask questions then. And then we're going to move from that into the submitted questions that were provided ahead of time. So we can just kind of take a look through the list on what kind of issues that you're having from location to location. If there's anything specific about a branch or that needs a support case, we'll go ahead and get cases set up with each of you on any of those kind of tasks that we need to do, and just kind of move through those submitted questions. And then anything that comes up, either related to the first bit of discussion or the submitted questions and the answers that we're kind of providing and working through, feel free to kind of pounce on us at the end. So I think we'll have plenty of time. We did schedule this for plenty of time. I don't know if we're going to need the full kind of 2 hours that were scheduled, but if we get done a little bit early, great. The next steps from this point moving forward we're going to get much more granular and set up a schedule so that we can have a kind of smaller group workshops that'll do a little bit better in-depth examinations of the specific subsidiaries and the groups that we're talking to at that point. So we're kind of, like I said in the beginning, we're looking to set the table with this first call, make sure everyone's on the same page in terms of the data collection that we're looking for, the different tools that we're using to schedule, how things should be working from an application standpoint, and then we'll take that to the next level. Now that we have a base of good information, what are the things that we can do moving forward? Can we have the system help us, do some thinking, for example? Can we, get better data? Yep. Was there a question or? Okay.
Nope. I'm just saying good. That's perfect.
Okay. All right. So we kind of played with some of your locations earlier. I'm just going to grab this guy because it has some pretty good information and it's not perfect. So I don't know if the user from this location 1 FRB is on the call or not, but I'm going to use that as an example today to kind of work through my stuff. And just to kind of let everybody know where I am, if you're not used to these screens, and you've probably all seen them before, I'm in the deliveries and order screen, which is Control D. You can also get to it from View, Grid Type, Deliveries and Orders, right there, Control D. I like this screen particularly for sessions like this because it gives us the most amount of data in kind of a single platform. I can look at this and in a couple of seconds I can tell you whether or not we're doing a pretty good job with this particular location. And so far today things look good. I go back to yesterday, Monday. I'm hitting the kind of key data elements that I'm looking for. The one thing that pops out at me at this particular location is the driver level assignments. And I'm going to talk to how those work and why we're getting gaps on some of them right now and why we're not on others. So we'll kind of hit that as we move forward. But looking at Wednesday, I'm just going to pull one of these up as an example. So we kind of have the key kind of data component elements in place. And to do this, I'm just going to double click and bring up the edit screen. And what this is really doing, our application is really doing, is it's giving you a container that we call the delivery or the trip, which ends up being the how we're doing the effort. So the how is which truck, who drove, when did it leave, when did it get back, how many miles, those kind of key components. And then the orders are contained by that trip. So in this case, it's just a single order. so pretty straightforward from a delivery perspective. One order, we went to this Maple Creek in Noonan, Georgia, and we were driven by this guy. I'm not going to attempt to say that name. In truck 221, we've got about 2 hours and 20 minutes total time, a little bit past our expectation, but I'm going to talk about that expectation and how we can get a little bit better with what we're looking at from an expectation standpoint. We drove about 22 or so miles to complete that particular effort. We were looking at about $95 from an estimated delivered cost, and it ended up costing us a little bit more, probably based on that time overage. And then at the order level, you're also seeing the kind of key components of that order. When you got to the job site. So at 7:38 this morning is when we got there. At 9:26, that's when we left. And the reason I wanted to kind of hit these kind of 5 pieces of data. So I've got the specific vehicle. I'm just going to hit the plus on that one, so we're looking at that one in particular. The specific vehicle that we drove, who drove it, what time it left, when we got to the location, when we left the location, and then ultimately the time that we got back to our yard. Those kind of 7 data elements roll up to give us that fully realized cost of delivery. And we give you some very granular details related to that cost of delivery. In this case, it's pretty straightforward because it is a one-to-one relationship. So all of the delivery costs are going to be ultimately absorbed by this one order. So in this case, 625148-2 is going to have everything rolled up for that particular cost. And then we take and we break it down based on what happened from a delivery perspective. Now we have both transportation-related costs, and if you're not aware of what these mean, TL and TE are transportation labor and transportation equipment. So these are the costs of the travel element of this particular delivery. So basically the windshield time for getting from your warehouse to this particular customer's location and then back. And then we also have the stocking considerations. So the amount of time that you spent at the job site basically offloading the product, you've got both equipment costs and stocking costs there as well. And then when you have multiple tickets on it, there's ultimately a cost ratio percentage that breaks out the transportation component and spreads it across multiple orders, and I'll show you that in just a bit. But the reason all of this is ultimately important is when you have all kind of 7 pieces of data, this can become a very accurate piece of information for us to start to assess how well we're performing from a delivery perspective. And we can get a very good look from a customer-by-customer basis, ship-to by ship-to basis, trucks, drivers, basically anything to give us good feedback on where we're winning and losing, and give you additional ammunition, particularly at kind of a higher level or management level, to make good decisions with how jobs should be priced out, or what kind of competitions in your market that you need to worry about, and what leeway do you have from an operational perspective. Which of your customers are more difficult to deliver to, and which ones are easier, and those kinds of things. So those are the kind of key data elements from a trip perspective, and there's what I call is kind of the 5 keys, right? It's truck, driver, time out, time in, and then ultimately the mileage on that particular delivery effort. The time values and the estimated values are there, and they're good. And the reason we like to have them in place is because it does give you some benchmark information. But I want to talk to you just real quick about ultimately how those are calculated, because there are some things that obviously go into that. The estimated mileage is pretty straightforward. We know where your warehouse is. If you're geocoding all of your stops, and we've got a good position from a delivery perspective, we know roughly how long it's going to take you to get there. There's a mileage and time element that goes into that. So your mileages are very close. When I do examinations across your locations, mileages are pretty good. We're looking for 21 miles, we drove 22. We're looking for 87, we drove 83. We're well in the ballpark on the majority of this across your locations where we're getting good geocode components. So the place that we can work a little bit better is kind of understanding the time component element of this trip. Now, I looked at this one and I wanted to use it as an example because it was pretty standard a lot of our customers utilize this tool, and it's basically having a default at the order level that defines the amount of time we're expecting this delivery to be completed. And it depends on the user and kind of who's living inside this particular environment, because some people like it to be as accurate as they can. Other folks will try to utilize different load types that you've got available at the point of order. So if we can get additional training to your sales staff and they're able to provide us more accurate information about the delivery component, we can start to affect that duration. And you can ultimately also manually adjust some of this. But what this
gives us is that's the estimated time that they think they're going to be on site doing the delivery, right?
Exactly correct. Yep. And this 60 comes out of this default load type. So if no one defines a load type at the point of order, it's going to come through as the 60 minutes. Now it can be affected. So if you knew that was going to take longer than 60 minutes, you can key in a different value, and it'll kind of use that as it builds out that estimate, specifically for time and for the employee-related cost information that goes into the estimates on that side. It's also going to give you very good, accurate data in terms of when you can expect your vehicles to be back, and if you're going to be available for second and third runs, the more information that ultimately can come back from that particular screen. So I looked through this guy earlier, and pretty much everything was kind of default 60 minutes. I don't think any of the users were ultimately doing anything from load type, and I didn't see any duration adjustments. So I want you to know that is there, and we are more than happy to put together some training information, or to have a little bit, anything that we can give your point of order folks that might kind of help that information to flow through so that it's a little better leading up. And then to affect it, like I said, it is simple enough. So if you're doing anything from an order manipulation standpoint and you need to make a change or an adjustment, you can just double click on that order and it'll allow you to edit the duration, right, like that. Okay.
So just to clarify, Charlie, even if the duration is set to 60 minutes and it ends up taking 120 minutes, the costing information is still going to be accurate, right? It's just that our estimate for what the costing was going to be. Well,
correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And the reason I bring that up is I had a good customer that did a study recently who was looking at customer stocking conditions, because one of the things they were trying to kind of get a handle on is what kind of labor at the point of delivery are you really having to deal with. You can deliver one house pack to one customer and one to another customer, and it can take twice as long. And it's because every time you get there, the job site's always a mess, or it's not ready, or you've got to cut through some windows you didn't know you were going to, stuff like that. So the more detail that we can get to give you some comparative analysis on that, the better we can kind of set expectations at both customer level and the sales level, and then, moving forward, understanding what it's going to take operationally to complete that effort. It is obviously getting tacked into the estimate. So when we do this initial calculation here, it is a roll-up, both of the travel considerations, so to get from your warehouse to the customer and back, and then the amount of time on the job site. Now, the one other thing to consider there, and I don't know if this happens as much for you guys, but in some cases we have multiple orders that will ultimately end up being delivered to the same ship to or the same point of delivery. So they are both order level and job account level defined. So if you've got 4 orders going to the same place and it's going to take 60 minutes, you want to make sure that they don't all show 60 minutes, because that's going to roll up all 60 and it's now going to be expecting 240 minutes. It's not terrible, obviously, that you're being underneath that, but it gives you a little better from an estimated comparative analysis in the long run. So that's kind of the keys that roll up that estimated time. Like I said, the mileage is fairly straightforward. The amount of time you spend on the job, pretty simple to understand. As soon as you get to that initial geofence, and then when you ultimately leave on that geofence, you've got that data being rolled out. And I'm sure that some of you have seen this before. The way that we kind of set our system from a geofence perspective is to capture the initial arrival time and then the final delivery time. So if your truck has to do repositions or go around the block and get a better angle at a different building or those kinds of things, we can still capture all of that effort that's on the specific job site. So in this case, it took close to 2 hours to get this particular job done. I don't know what we're doing on here. I'm not going to start making any guesses on any of this. It does look like this is probably a pretty big order. I think everybody knows that you can get the drill down information by double-clicking anywhere you see an order number. So if you were wondering what that particular ticket was, you can click on it, see what it was. That kind of stuff is available for you there. So that's my kind of basic trip understanding component. What I want to do is kind of bridge off of that and talk about your customer just a bit. And to get to one of your customers, I'm just going to do a simple right-click, and then there's a View Customer Account. And I know you guys differ across your company in terms of how your customers are managed and whether or not you're setting up specific ship-to accounts in SX, or if you're writing everything at kind of an order header level and an address level. So I just want to show you where those components exist. The top level is what we would call the RSC record, or the main account record, that kind of is built in place, and it's for billing and that kind of detail. So everywhere you go to make a delivery, there's going to be this kind of main account top level, and then below it would be any of the points of delivery. Now they can be the same. If you don't have an ARSS record, we are going to generate a sub-account underneath that so that we can make the delivery to it. We're also going to generate anything that gets created underneath this account as an ARSS record. So as a specific ship-to in your SX system, we're going to pull all those across, and we're going to treat them uniquely. So they're going to have individual addresses. They're going to get specific geocodes based on that level assignment. They can ultimately have different stop time attributes. Those kinds of things are all available. Now, in the case of this particular customer, and the reason I kind of picked it and wanted to show you was because this is a customer set up as what we call no lat long saved account. And ultimately what that means is every time you write an order against this particular customer, 10780, we're going to ignore anything that we saved at the customer attribute level, and we're going to look specifically to the order header and what the user typed in for the address information for our geocoding engine. Now ultimately, if it was a delivery that's going to a specific ship-to account and we're going to consistently go there multiple times, the best practice is to make sure users are setting up ship-to accounts. If it's a one-off or it's a residential kind of a customer and you're constantly changing those from order to order and you don't really want to go through the process of creating all those individual ship-tos, that's perfectly fine. We just want to make sure all those customers that are set up as that no lat long saved so that we can look to the order level to pull that information. And to kind of see how that works from an order perspective, I'm just going to double click into here again, come over to the order side, and then in my customer tab, you'll see this automatically has a box checked that we're shipping to a different address than from the main account address. And the latitude longitude is going to come right out of the address data written into that particular order. So these are the order header attributes for that particular order. Now, the keys to that obviously are we got to make sure that your order entry folks are accurate in terms of what they're putting in. If it's Johnson Ferry Street and they put in Johnson Ferry Road, it's going to cause us some headaches. We'll have to clean up more than we want to clean up. But it kind of gives you that footprint and that understanding of where things live and where they exist. And that is, again, a conversation that we're happy to have and set up some training with your order entry personnel to make sure we've got some best practices in place for what'll work location to location, that sort of thing. Any questions on customer data at that point?
No, I'll add one comment to that. Is it seems like most of the locations I've been to are looking at the order level for the address as opposed to the ship to.
Yep.
But,
and I'll tell you that is very consistent for SX customers, particularly SX customers who were in the character version for a long time, because it was much more of a headache to create a ship-to account on the fly in your character version. Now, I think everywhere now, you guys are you up on the GUI everywhere?
no.
From an order entry perspective?
Not even close.
Okay. So
we're still in the character version.
Still character. Okay. So I completely agree, because I know how it works, and I've lived in that system. So if you can do it at the order header level and it's not causing any kind of downward problems or downriver problems, then I would continue doing that. The times that it makes sense for you to set up ship twos, however, are the times where you're going to go there multiple times, because it's one fix that we have to make, and then we're good. We don't have to continue to look at it or worry about somebody fat fingering the keystrokes to get the address in there, that sort of stuff.
Right.
So that's where I would live there. Now, the piece that jumps out at me on this particular guy is that once in a while I'm missing a driver. And if I go back to yesterday, you'll see there's a couple here missing driver, and that's awesome if you have robotic cars that are vehicles that are making your deliveries for you. But I don't think you've bought any of those at this point.
No.
So probably we have a driver here, and the reason that it looks like this a lot of times for our customers, particularly our drag and drop customers, is there's not always an equipment level driver assigned. And when there isn't an equipment level driver, you do have to make the next step to ensure that you are getting a driver associated to that particular trip. And what I mean by that is I'm just going to come into the equipment side, and I'm going to show you this particular location. So I'm going to do a little filter, and what was it, FRB, like that. Okay. So these are the pieces of equipment that we've got set up for this particular location. And you can see a few of them have assigned drivers. So this guy is Christopher, Tommy, etc. When I schedule an order against 220, it's going to be Christopher Cobb associated to that particular vehicle. So that one is pretty straightforward. If Chris is not driving that truck that day, I do need to manually make the adjustment to get the right driver assigned to that vehicle. So when we go back and have some reports against, what are my drivers doing and how well and those kinds of things, I've got access to that information in our system. If you have a pretty solid position in terms of driver and vehicle assignments, I would have you make them. And when I say pretty solid, I would say if it's 80% or more, this driver is in this vehicle, I'd make that assignment, because it's going to make your life a little bit easier from a drag and drop perspective. You're not going to have to do a confirmation on the driver level. It's just going to be part of that drag and drop. If you're not so consistent and your drivers tend to shift a good deal, you've got more trucks than drivers, or you've got drivers that jump around quite a bit and are one vehicle to another, and you're doing some different things with reloads, then I would tend to leave them off and make sure you're making that assignment either through the combined window or through the delivery effort. And to do that, I'm just going to kind of show you where it is, because it's pretty straightforward. Whoops, I hit the wrong button there. In the case of this 231, I don't ultimately know who's driving it, but if I was going to associate a driver to it, I just double click, I come down, and I make the driver assignment. That'll then kind of roll up from all that cost analysis perspective. So we've got the information that we're looking for on that side. You can do that after the fact if you wish. All of the stored procedures that are ultimately happening from a cost analysis perspective are happening at the point in time. So when I double click that is when that delivered cost is ultimately coming through. Now, if you don't have any driver assigned to it, obviously you're going to miss out on the labor component costs. So the 2 with the L are going to fall away on that side. And when it comes to those cost components, the places that they exist are both in the equipment master. So when you're looking at a particular truck, there is a cost, in this case, cost per mile or cost per hour. You've got the ability to do it in both directions. It kind of depends. I think most of you guys are cost per mile on the equipment side. And then similar for your people. You've got a cost per on the vehicle, on the personnel side. So the more data that we can have, the better that we can provide you accurate information in terms of what's going on with that. And the reason I kind of bring that up is because you do have the ability to come in and do a manual adjustment to make that driver assignment. But I just want you to be careful whenever you're doing kind of what I would call these manual deliver efforts, because they tend to be the majority of our support calls when something gets screwed up. And we can come back in and see and kind of go through the steps that occurred to kind of have that problem come up, and that's that status history discussion that I'm going to get to in just a bit. I'm going to switch before I do that to the truck scheduler side, because I just want to show you ultimately what happens when you're dragging and dropping. That 231 vehicle, I don't believe we had a driver assigned to that vehicle. So when you take an order and you assign it to that 231 vehicle, if you don't do anything else from that point forward, and your geofence application picks it up and it uploads and all that, everything is going to work as you expected, except for we're not going to have that driver assignment on that particular order. And we just want to make sure we have that there. So you've got a couple of ways to do that. You can double click and you can add it in. The other tool that I like to use, and it kind of depends on your world, but we also have this ability to, from the truck scheduler, do this show combine window, which gives me the components of this particular delivery. So it gives me this kind of full feedback of this is the order that I'm going to first, and then second, and then third, et cetera, everything in there. Plus the attributes of the trip. It's going to be my third run. It's going to be somebody driving this vehicle with that device in it. And the reason I like this screen is because it kind of gives you a quick confirmation to make sure that you're good with it. And then you can do two things from this particular grid. You can upload this trip to the GPS device. So if he got back from that first stop and you didn't have anything scheduled to it, this little button right here, this phone-looking button, will send the order attributes up to the GPS device, and then it's ready to go at that point. So it's basically committed and uploaded, and now you just start driving on the road. It's going to pick up everything it can. The other thing this screen gives you is, and ultimately we're going to want to work with you to clean up some of the data, but it also gives you information regarding other orders that are potentially available for you to handle while you're making this delivery effort. So this was a return, so it's probably not giving me a great example, but here are other kind of customer return orders, and if you didn't know that was there and you knew you still had to do it, you've got this ability to right-click or to click and drag, so you can move it over from right to left. If you didn't like what you did there, you can remove it and start again. And then for the locations, and when we start getting more granular in terms of what we can do from a location level, we can also show you how you can kind of handle things from a geographical perspective. If you're delivering into certain areas or certain cities, or certain zones, we can get a lot of that from the point of order information automatically through some tools that we have in our importer. So if you're getting a map zone level assignment at an order, I can show you other tickets that are also in that space. Things that might be scheduled for today, or it might be scheduled tomorrow, that sort of thing, so that you can start to do your best to make sure you're getting a full truck out and you're optimizing what you have from an equipment perspective. So that's the kind of the scheduling component. The drag and drop, pretty simple and straightforward, like you guys are all probably using today. You just grab it and drag it in place. When there's a second one, you grab it, drag it over the top. If you didn't like how you did it, pull it back down. It's very flexible. I just want to make sure that you're to the next step of confirming, yep, I did get all the key components up front. And what I mean by key components is you gave me the driver and the truck. From that point forward, I give you everything else. GPS is going to take over and handle your exits, your customer level stop time and departure times, the mileage, everything else that's going to roll up from that point forward. So any questions on that?
I want to touch on crew members as well.
Okay. Yep.
Crew and
I can also, I have the same kind of capability to manage crew. With my order detail, there are selection options here. So if these 3 people are going to go along with this particular delivery, you just click on them and you're ready to go. If you're not, you just uncheck them. Same thing with specialty equipment. If you're pulling a an extra trailer or a pup or, that sort of thing, those level assignments can be made as well. That can also be done in that combine tool as well. So I've got on the right-hand side, we've got these kind of selectable criteria for the crew. You guys are on a slightly older version of this, so we've cleaned it up a bit. So you're not, these kind of grayed out check marks actually are null values. They're not really checked. To really check them, you need to make it look like that on that highlighted, check mark instead of the grayed out check mark. But you can do both. Again, these are your crew members. These are your the special equipment capable devices. And in the newer version, we also have like a search function. So you can type in the first couple of letters, and it'll sort down to those folks. So you're not seeing as huge of a mess of a list that you've got to scroll through to find the right people. It gets much easier to find that right person. And we do the same thing at the order level, where I've got a new kind of window here that gives you that kind of quick search feature. So you just type first couple letters, and it's going to send that out for you there as well. And the other reason I didn't mention it earlier, the other reason I like the combine window is it gives you feedback from an upload perspective and a status perspective. So you would know by looking at the screen, these two you're not sure about because they're still white and they're in that new order status. So you don't know, do I have a truck, or do I have a driver assigned, do I have equipment, any of that. You will know if you do the combine process because the status is going to update to tell you you've done it. So I don't have to look back at it again unless something has to change, unless I have to move it around or add another order to it or something like that. So that's why I like that right-click, Show Combine tool. You can also get to it with the little button here, the fourth one from the left, Combine Order, and then it's pretty straightforward. The reason I like it from the grid is because it fills everything for me automatically. I just hit the Show Combine, and it's going to pull up that entire trip detail. Now I don't have a driver here, so that would be one of the things I'd want my dispatcher to do, make sure they get that driver level assignment there. You also have one other option that I wanted to talk about because it's a feature that a lot of people do take advantage of, and it's from either your order screen or your deliveries and order screen where you can take multiple tickets, and I'm just going to grab these three, and you can throw those 3 tickets to the combine window automatically. So if those three are going to go on the same truck, you can do this kind of step ahead of time to get it to a vehicle, get it to the, I'm not going to save any of this because I don't want it to mess up what the guy's been doing. But that right click will then, pre-populate that form with the orders that you selected. So you don't have to one at a time each of the tickets. You can also optimize them inside that. Anything that goes into that are kind of your capable functionality from that particular window. Everything else on this screen so far today looks really good. I've been looking through, what your ETAs are against actual arrival times, when ETAs are getting adjusted, what kind of effect that's having. We're also capturing estimated return times, which are very close to your trip time ends. So your drivers are doing a good job once they pull out of the jobs to get back on time. And ultimately, what that ends up doing is giving you a little higher ability from a culture perspective to understand, what's happening day to day. If I need to make some shorter term decisions, or if I've got a wrench in the process, I'm going to know who I can count on, who's on their way, when they're going to be back, and I can start giving instant feedback instead of having to circle back and get on a phone call after phone call and those kinds of things. So the more you can do kind of lead up, the better. What I want to do is, from this point before I switch over to Ben, is a quick little look at status history so that you can understand the components from a history perspective, and then we'll get over into the map side before we finish up with questions. So this is a pretty straightforward status history. There's not much going on here, and it looks particularly how I would want it to look. We've got a new order that came in through the interface. It was drag and dropped to a particular truck, and you'd be able to tell that from the edit because we would have the information updated from an audit perspective. I got to the customer site. I delivered the order level. As I delivered the order level, it gave me a last stop update to tell me the truck was returning. So I've got that status returning. and then ultimately I get back to my warehouse. So the way that this looks from a read perspective is it's a bottom to top. You know, the stuff that was first is on the bottom, the stuff that was most recent is on the top, and then the order level versus the trip level components with these checkboxes. So these are the things that happen at the order level. These are the things that happen at the trip level. So pretty straightforward there. If I grab one of these in routes, you'll see a little bit different information here where I did have a combine order tool used. Looks like there was something that got pulled out of a trip and moved around. And what this does is it gives us additional feedback. You know, this was an order ultimately written a while ago. I had it scheduled on the 30th, but I pulled it out because I didn't like what I was doing, that sort of thing. But it shows us the who, what, the where, the when, all of that. And we use that to kind of help understand what's happening from a support in a user level perspective. So anytime that you give us a call and we get on your screen or we're looking at what you're doing, we're going to go right to that status history, and we're going to try to talk through it with you to understand what happens, and if we can make suggestions on things that happened. If something got pulled off of a truck or didn't get delivered, here this would have been a good way to handle that. Those kinds of discussions. And we will spend a good deal more time. I just wanted a quick introduction on that. We'll spend a good deal more time on that once we start to get into our breakout groups. So from my end, I'm pretty much good. I'm going to switch over to Ben so that he can do a little bit of a map rectify tool set, just make sure everyone kind of understands the screens and the options there, and then we'll switch over into your questions.
All right. So as Charlie, we kind of touched on it a few minutes ago between Charlie and Richard that, primarily, we trained everybody, and you guys have been using the order level address information to set your geofences with. And so a couple things, that Charlie kind of auto-reviewed were to tell at the customer level whether it's set up correctly to use that order address information or not. And again, just as a quick rehash of it, the easiest way is just to find an order that you have a question on, do a right-click on it, and choose the View Customer Account. You'll see that, I don't know if you can see it from the screen, but ultimately the Ship To account that order was written against will be highlighted. And so all you need to do is come to the Sub-Account Information tab, and all we're looking for is whether this No Lat Long Save box is checked or unchecked. If it's checked, then that tells us it's using the address information specific to the order. If it's unchecked, then it's using whatever information was entered right here at this sub-account for the Ship To level. Okay. Like I said, I believe in all the training we've done, everybody primarily is using the order level address information to determine where the delivery point is supposed to be, and so we're going to kind of operate on that as far as running through that rectify address process from the delivery map tool. I already have it open, so I'm just going to bring it up. And just as a quick, we got to make sure that we're in the route map option of delivery map. If you're not, you can do the file and choose it here, or if you have it open but it's not the screen that's in the front, come to window, and you'll see that it's available to choose right there. From there, we're going to open up our rectify address tool, and I'm sure everybody's familiar with this by now. If you're not, or if you have users in our, Richard and John Wynn have put together some good documentation that has screenshots related to this entire process, step by step. And correct me if I'm wrong, Richard, but we've got it where every option that needs to be selected is highlighted. Yep. So it's visually just match it up. Okay. So we're going to always do it for job accounts with orders. Okay. And I'm going to come down here and we're going to just continue to use the FRB location for Company 1 as the location that we're going to go out of. My date range, one of the big keys with this, especially once you have this process and you're comfortable with it, is don't just run it for the day that you're scheduling orders for. Try to stay ahead of the process by running it for a week out or 2 weeks out. However far out you've got orders actively coming into the system, run it. And all that does is provide you on a daily basis with fewer orders that you're going to have to fix as you get to the point of scheduling for the next day or whatever. Related to using the order address information to determine the point of delivery, the key from this rectify address tool is making sure that in the options we have this include no allow long orders box checked. If you don't have that, it's not going to go out and try to determine the orders that are set to use that address information. It's only going to try to plot the ship to accounts. So having that box checked tells this rectify address process, go out and not only find ship tos that need fixed, but also find all the orders that we've told it to resolve. From there, there isn't any other options that need to be chosen. You can choose to select only addresses without or unselect it. If you have it selected, it's only going to go out and display and fix ones that actually have a missing geofence. If you have it unchecked, it's going to display those that already have them as well as any ones that don't and try to fix them. I'm going to leave it unchecked just so we have a good example. Now we're just going to hit the plot button. Okay, and so it's going to go out and it's going to plot all the orders that meet that criteria between they have a date of the 8th through the 18th. Okay, and it returned a handful. And then from there, all I need to do is let me scroll down in here so we can get kind of a zoomed-in view of where we want to be, so it's more visual. As a review, we're going to have one of three colors that come up as these boxes as far as this results. Green means that based on the address information that was available, it was able to determine where that point of delivery needs to be. You can click on any given one of those orders and it will take you to where that is on the map. Obviously, you can see we've got some fairly large geofences. A lot of you guys, we discussed in training or whatnot, you've got big subdivisions, you're shipping to a certain point at that subdivision, and then the materials get, so you're more concerned about hitting the fence of the subdivision and not necessarily specifically the house that you're making the delivery to. And so you've set those geofences to be a little bigger to help deal with that and make sure that you're hitting those fences. But I can click on any given one of these, and it's just going to take me and show me where that expected delivery point is. In this case, because you can see that the order number is displayed, so that is the indicator that is using the address information from the order to determine where the point of delivery is. Red obviously means that based on the information that was available, in this case for that order, there isn't enough information for the system to determine where that delivery needs to be. And so those are the ones that either by double-clicking, bringing up the edit screen, cleaning up the address information if there's misspellings or whatnot, or by just using the pushpin utility to just come down on the map and say it's right here and updating it and setting the fence. And then if there were others, we don't have any in here because this particular location looks like all the accounts are set up to use the order specific address information, but there would be one other color that could be displayed here as these boxes go, and that is yellow, and that's an indicator that it is a ship to level fence that was able to be found and set. And so it would display the same as any of the other orders. If I click on it, it'd show me where that is. One other point as far as the settings and how to tell the system to use that. So if I'm talking about setting a fence for a specific order, that geofence is only specific to 625.1506. By default, it doesn't matter what else I have written, what other orders come across that physically are going to be delivered to that same spot. That fence is only specific to this order. But we do have some functionality, and Richard, I don't remember if you recall when we actually put it in place. I think we'd already put some locations on, some companies on before we really had it in place. But we do have some additional tools available that you would need to set when you log into the delivery map application. From the tools and the options, there's this orders tab, okay? And what we want to have set here is if you are going to use order addresses to determine your point of deliveries, and you don't want to have to go in every time you're going to deliver to that point and reassign a geofence, you can use this find order functionality to help you have the system do it for you. And how it works is I determine where I want the address information that I want to match. So if I jump out of here real quick and I come up to this Palmettos, okay? So for example, let's just say 573 Hood Road is where I want to. I'm going to make multi-deliveries there, but the system, because it's too new of a street, is not going to be able to find it on its own through the regular plotting tools that are available. So if I were to come in here and I have under my options and my orders, and I were to say I want you, when you can't find it on your own based on the actual address information, I want you to go back and look in the database for previously written orders that do have a geofence, that have the address, the information matches that. In this case, I would turn it on to the address 2 and the city. And if I wrote a new order that came through, regardless of what I had in address 1, as long as I had 573 Hood Road in Noonan, it's going to say, well, I couldn't find it on my own, but I did find this order, and it does have a geofence, and so I'm just going to use that fence instead of forcing you to plot it yourself. Okay, and again, most of this hopefully is review for everybody, but we thought it was useful enough and worth going through, because obviously the geofencing activity is a major portion of getting the successful tools and the successful data points out of the application, and having all that automated GPS geofencing activity take place. So we wanted to just go through, make sure that everybody understand where to run the process from, what options should be chosen or shouldn't be chosen, and then specifically if you're going to use order level addresses, the additional utility that's available to help you, so you don't have to plot every order that goes to a specific address. You'll let the system kind of help you determine those once you've plotted it the first time.
Any questions on any of that?
No.
Okay.
I'll add a little bit to that.
Yep.
If anybody has any questions about how that all works, you can give me a call. Basically, when an order gets input into trend, and then it gets imported into DQ, it takes a look at the order that came in, and it says, okay, do I need to look at the ship to level, or do I need to look at the order level for the address? And so what Ben was kind of showing us is how we set up whether or not you're looking at the ship to level or the order level. And I can certainly work with any of you if you need to, fix a particular account that we want to look between either ship to or order level. So.
All right.
That's it.
Okay, good with me. What about kind of circling back to the first part? Any other questions there before we kind of move into what was submitted at this point? Everyone still awake?
Yep.
Okay. All right, good. All right, so why don't I kind of let you, Ben, move into the questions that were submitted, our direction, and we can kind of work through those. And then, like I said early on in our call, if there's a particular issue, or if there's a specific GPS box that we're having a problem with, those kinds of things, we're going to work with you to make sure we get a case open. Everybody, should have direct access to get to us. Either circling through Richard, or if you have a relationship with Ben or one of our other folks in the support team. We're going to make sure everything's contained. We do have a pretty good system on our side to keep track of cases and who makes calls and follow-ups and those kinds of things. So we want to make sure that all of your equipment is working and things are doing as what they need to be doing. So again, I'm going to turn this back over to Ben, let him kind of work through some of this, and we'll keep it as interactive as possible. So if this was your question and we're not answering it to your satisfaction, let us know so that we can kind of dig back into it and get a little better understanding of what you're looking for.
All right. So the first question was kind of discussing, reports regarding determinant turn times. This is something that Richard and I just have worked on the last couple weeks. Charlie, you might chime in to giving me some other options as far as what they are. But I found that the best one, and the one that Richard and I specifically worked on to make most useful for you guys, is called the Daily Activity by Truck. So if I jump over here, and I'll just bring up the reports module and we'll run it. Okay, and what that particular one is allowing, it gives a pretty good break. I'm just going to run it for, again, the same location we've been working through. I'm going to run it for the month just so we can kind of see. One of the keys with the reports, make sure that, in order to have it accurate, that you're choosing the status related to only the stuff that's actually been delivered. So everything should be in a delivered status unless you're using a job site not ready option as well. But you want to make sure you're choosing the specific statuses to measure against. Otherwise, your results are going to be, questionable, because you're going to have orders being included that don't have the necessary criteria to meet those measurements that the report is providing. So I'm just going to choose delivered status. I'm going to run it for the month, and I'm just going to daily activity. I need to choose the correct report as well. Okay. Then I'm going to run preview. This particular report, you get to see, do you just want to see a one-line average, or do you want to see a total for that date range for each vehicle? And it produces some pretty good information. Number one, it's going to give me, let's come down to the non-undefined trucks. Okay. So it's going to tell me for that date range, it made 24 trips, a total of 42 orders delivered, total weight, utilization, which is your weight versus your capacity, the actual amount of time spending to make the deliveries, and the actual amount of turn time. And then at each trip level, and this is where if anybody was using this prior to a couple of weeks ago, where you may not have seen the differences, is we added the trip date in there so you can determine what it is. Now, the turn time is only the difference on any given day between the first trip and any additional trip that was scheduled. So if we came down here to the 16th, so the first trip that went out, he left at 7:46, got back at 12:29 for a total of 4 hours and 43 minutes. Obviously, there's no turn time related to the first run, but then he had a second run, leaving at 1:05, back at 4:19, and so the turn time between 12:29 and 1:05 is this measurement of 36 minutes for the turn time. And you can go down and look at this for any given one. I think, Richard, I don't know what the feedback's been for. I don't recall specifically who we did this work for, but I think this is the easiest one to track and monitor those turn times for any given truck, any given day.
Yeah, that's
Well,
what I've been
looking for on that. I mean, are you looking for just a summary of turn times, or across your company, or specific to vehicles? Because there are about 10 different reports that have turn times related to them. I mean, this one, I like what Ben's showing you guys, but this is 1 month and it's already 7 pages, and it probably takes you 30 minutes to figure out what you're looking for. So if I can do that better, let me know, because I'm happy to. We consistently are generating reports and other tools and things specific to customers. So if you want something specific that I don't have exactly as you want it, that's the kind of stuff that I'll submit and make sure that it gets put in place. If you want just a single day, show me today and the turn times. I could do that real easy. I could look at specific vehicles. I could look at specific locations. I've got a number of tools with which I can pull that information out. So I think part of this discussion, especially moving forward, is the kind of things that I would like to do for you as well, is to understand what are those kind of key attributes that you want to use to benchmark and to kind of set success levels. And if turn time is one of them, I want to work with you to make the specific report that's going to make sense for you guys. So instead of having to pull up a 7-page report for one of your locations, by the way, it would probably be 50 pages if you pick more than one location. I can give you it in 1 page, or something simpler. So if we want to start thinking about that, or if we want to have 2 or 3 or kind of 4, KPI or key performance indicators that you can start to think about and agreeing on across your entire organization, then I can start to work with my programming team and the development guys to make sure we're hitting those particular requirements.
Okay.
Does that make sense for everybody? I don't know the best way to do that. Maybe you and I can kind of work on a survey, Richard, or a couple of kind of get started and see if we can get some agreement across the group on how it makes most sense.
I'm guessing. I mean, based on the people that are still involved, would you want to do it by driver or would you want to do it by truck?
By truck, I think it would be everybody. Well, this is Michael, but running it for a month would be overwhelming, and looking at the data. But if we can train ourselves to look at it by week and kind of summarize it, and then if you had that data in Excel where you could clean it up and say, hey, Joe took half a day off or something like that, it's kind of skewed. You'd have a good idea, or even an average by location where I could look at location FRB versus XCOL, and they're turning them in 36 minutes in Fairburn, but in Columbus it takes an hour and 22. Is it space constraints and they just don't have the space to preset their loads, or is it an operations issue? So just having a couple options where we can look at the data is great.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Well, I'm gonna put that one in my notes so that we can come up with a way to simplify it a bit so that it's more of a not having to work through a huge report to get what you're looking at, but it gives you an opportunity if you see something to then drill into it a little bit farther to get some more data there. All right.
All right.
And just to kind of tack onto that, the other thing I'd like to do, because right now when everyone opens the report module, there's 217 reports available, and that's also overwhelming because a lot of those reports have limited usefulness in terms of how they can work inside of your organization. Because I've got a lot of different companies and different folks doing different things, and they measure things differently. So as a part of this moving forward, not only do I want to understand the kind of key data elements that you're looking for, but I also want to simplify it so it's not 217 reports and you're picking the 6. I want it to be, here's the 6, and now you can kind of work off of that and put them into Excel and do those kinds of things that you want to do.
So is that possible to do now?
It is. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we could work offline, Richard. It's just the easiest thing is we probably want to keep them available in case somebody wants to run them. We can create a new category and assign what you guys find your key reports to be. That way it's just, you just come down and choose that category, and then those reports are all together in one spot.
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. And then that's good. Yeah.
So we'll move on to question 2. Is there a mapper report where you can use to show every GPS position for any given day for a given truck, including every geofence that was set up for that day and scheduled, including the yard? And I guess the short answer is no, we don't have something that's going to provide you all of that in one shot. The GeoHistory tool from ODT View will show you every GPS position related to each trip, including the location and each fence that was scheduled for each order. So that's available for that, but you'd have to run it individually for each trip that was scheduled on any particular day for that truck. The vehicle report from the
let me ask you what you're looking for here. If the person
I'm looking for I want a history for a given day that shows me every geofence that was set up and every breadcrumb, every GPS point that was generated for that day.
Okay, it's always going to be only one day. You're not going to look at a week. You just want to see yesterday, for example.
I would be happy with it for one day right now. I don't need to have it for a week.
And are you doing the kinds of things with this to see? All right, well, I was clearly using this truck in this part of town, but I didn't have any geofences assigned. I didn't have that kind of thing. So you can.
It might be that the geofence wasn't assigned, or it might be that the geofence was in the wrong place. It might be, there's a number of reasons why, I can't. But when I go into ODT View, right? If I don't have a timeout and a trip time in, then I can't see the breadcrumb trail, and I can't see I can see the geofence, I guess, but I can't see the breadcrumb trail.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a trip timeout, and I didn't have a on-site delivery time. And then if I go to the web portal and I'm a little bit late and the truck is already out on its second delivery, then I don't get to see the previous delivery. So I have no way of looking really back at history.
Well, as far as the geofences go, the vehicle report from the web portal is going to show you everywhere it's been, regardless of what's been uploaded, regardless of what stops they made. It does not show you where they were scheduled or anticipated to be made. So, they won't show you the geofences, but it's going to show you all the GPS activity, including everywhere it did stop.
That's all right. We can have that.
Yeah.
So I'll make a note into this to kind of give you another kind of deliverable option from the vehicle report to also to show you.
Include fences.
We do store the uploaded fences. We store the current fences in a slightly different table so that we can get to them faster, and they're indexed and that sort of thing. But I also have what was sent up at 6 this morning, what was sent up at 8 this morning, that kind of thing. So I get it to look back at that.
Yeah, and I'm looking, I want to see like every GPS data point, right? I want to see them all, and I know that means it could be a slow presentation because you're getting one GPS data point every minute and one per hour when it's stopped. But it would be nice to have something that shows me.
Well, let me just give you a little bit of a background on that, because what we would probably want to do would be to kind of give you some tools to do a little more effective data mining, because what you're asking for in a production environment is difficult. We get about 27,000 position records per minute, from all of the GPS devices that we have out there. So if we're looking at one truck, that's spread across a couple million records. If it's 6 hours of delivery. So that does take a good deal of time to consolidate. So using the production data is probably not the smartest. What we would be better off doing would be kind of doing some consolidated data mining, and then I could give you a better, I could show you yesterday real easily. So then I could index it. It could be specific to the vehicle. I can get some of that stuff out of the way, so it's not having to queue through everything. 27 million records. It's just having to queue through the 600 that relate to that one vehicle.
Right.
I'll spend some time thinking about that with my dev guys, because I think that probably works better, particularly if you're looking at yesterday and anything in the past. For the same day stuff, we can improve upon the current kind of vehicle report to kind of show you the fences in addition to the position data. But one of the reasons we've kind of limited the display is at a point the map rendering tools that we use start to slow down the more you throw at it. Right now I think our base limitation is 500 points. We can go above that, but it's kind of at some point you have diminishing return. If it's going to take you 2.5 minutes for the report to render, you're going to have moved on already.
Yep. So I don't think that there's any necessity to run the report for more than a day for a given truck. But that's what that would be a really nice feature for us to have.
Okay.
Number 3 on your list, Ben, you can skip.
Okay. I thought this was one that you and Vic and I talked about 2 weeks ago. I don't think we looked at the specifics of this particular order, but the results, I think, are related to the fact that there wasn't a device assigned to the truck. So.
Yeah, I think we're good with that one now.
Okay. What about number 4? This is trip specific, okay? So obviously the question is show and delivered, but you can't see anything. What I looked at is I could see that when it originally went en route via the geofence activity. And I specifically, Charlie referred to the order status history type tools. That's where I went to find that information. I could see from this trip audit when it went en route, what time that happened, and how it happened. Had a user done it, it would show a username and it would say an edit from this. So looking at that information, I was able to tell you that it did go en route at 5:38 based on geofence activity at the location, but it also updated at 6:20, which was kind of an indicator that it went out of the fence and it came back in, but then they left again, and we got it on site at 7:11 and then it delivered at 9:13. And so the problem is these two time points, the timeout and the time in, is what's causing your difficulty in trying to track where it was in ODT view, because again, it's using these two time points as the bookends to display the GPS activity at the trip level.
So how do I troubleshoot that? I guess
the way to do it, it's tricky. But the only thing the GPS device knows is that it came back into the warehouse geofence. When it comes back into the geofence, assuming that we either touch an order or it's beyond a certain time period, probably you've got a 30-minute default time period on your trips, then we make the assumption that we made the delivery effort. If the truck comes back and the delivery effort wasn't really made, then the user needs to open that trip up, clear out the trip time in, and re-upload it to the device. That way, when it'll get picked back up the next time he comes back into the geofence. So it is a little bit of a kind of a manual process in that instance, but it should only be happening in those instances where you've got where you've got a truck that has to come back or forgot something or was reloading for whatever reason,
or went to go fuel, or
right. Yeah, the fuel hopefully should be taken care of by the time requirement. So if we do like the 30-minute minimum, then we still keep that trip open. We don't close it just because that at that point. But that is an adjustable value that you can set and
at the
change
location level.
Yep. So if you've got some locations that fuel farther away, you can do that. The other thing that some of our customers do, and it's up to you, but they'll also create kind of these independent tickets for things like fueling effort. So instead of starting to track the delivery effort as it relates to the customer because your truck pulled out, let's instead put a fuel ticket in front of it, because I'm first going to send my guy to the gas station. He's going to fuel up, then he's going to come back, get everything loaded up, ready to go, and head out the door. So we've got a couple of different ways that we can handle that. And when we get more specific with your subs and kind of how they do those kinds of tasks, we can kind of make determinations on what makes sense for which locations to use what tools.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to my question that I had a little bit before, is being able to see all the geofences and all the GPS data points for a given day, and then I could better understand what's going on with this issue. Because right now I can't by looking in ODT view in the web portal, I can't see where the truck left the yard.
You can't see that 5:38 a.m. I'm not looking at the right one here, but let's.
Well, I can't see the breadcrumb trail where the truck left the yard.
Well, pull up, I mean, the bread you're talking about from geohistory or?
No, I'm not talking about yeah, I'm talking about geohistory. I'm talking about looking in ODT view or web portal. I'm not looking at status, history, or the audit.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you're looking at ODT view and you're in the geohistory tool, it's going to use the bookends. So it doesn't really matter what happens from a status perspective, because it's going to use what's in the trip time in and the trip time out to plot that information.
Yep.
If we don't have trip time in and out correct, then geohistory is not an effective tool. There's no other way around.
And so what I'm asking for is something that shows me everything for a given day.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, if you think that'll kind of clean that up and lend you some additional information, you'll at least see, yeah, okay, my truck went out here and then he came back. He wasn't really done with that delivery yet, because I still see it kept going.
It would give me, exactly. It would
Right.
give me a lot better information for troubleshooting why something was not done correctly, like in the case of this number 4 issue on my list. Like, I just don't know how to figure it out, right? I can't.
Okay.
And
I'll work out.
So everybody else, right? I mean, all the yards that I'm dealing with, they can't figure it out either. So
you can't figure it out, huh?
can't figure it out.
We'll get it.
One thing I will point out, in my troubleshooting of it, I didn't use any GPS history. I just looked at the status history to determine what happened. Because if I come to my trip audit, I can see it went en route. And again, so this is Eastern time because I'm on the server. So that's 5:40 Pacific, okay? And it was a geofence related update, and then it updated at 6:21 again, okay? If I close out of that and I come back to my order audit, I can see that, okay, here's my 8:40, here's my delivered, and then after that, starting at 7:11, I hit on site. So when I was looking at just troubleshooting this one, I got all the information I need to explain the I guess the basics of what happened using just the status history, not the actual GPS positions. But
what Ben is describing there is either the truck came back to get more material for the job, or they came back for some other reason. Because you have an arrival and a departure inside your trip window, and then you also have an arrival after you came back to your warehouse, after you came back to your yard. So your guy went back out, a second time. So you can. I'm gonna be the first one to admit status history can get it's cloudy in the beginning. But if the more you look at it, the more you can you get a feel for when things happen accurately and correctly, and then the ones that don't jump out at you. So you can jump on that real quick. When you see those 4 at the top, on-site to delivered, delivered on-site, on-site to delivered, those are in and out of the order level geofence. So you've got a bunch of kind of repositions or reloads, and from 10:12 to 12:13, you were somewhere else because he left at 10:12 and then it got back to it at 12:13. So that's kind of gives you the feedback to show me, hey, this trip, even though it closed at 9:20, it wasn't really done. He either came back and reloaded stuff, or he needed maybe it should have been set up as a second delivery because it was a big order that split into 2 tickets. And I know we've talked about that in some of our trainings. And again, I don't want to push off too much stuff, but the more we can understand what's happening at your locations, the better ammunition we can give you. Because really for me, there's probably 2 things that happened here. I came back because I forgot something, and I went back out to the same customer and finished the delivery. Or I was there and I delivered everything I had, and then I came back and got other stuff that was also going to that delivery. And ultimately, I would handle those two different ways. The first one I would handle just by clearing out the trip time in and re-pushing it to the device so it'll get picked back up. The second one is I would delete. Yep, just like that. Just delete it right out. The second one, I would create a copy of the order so that I can schedule it as a separate delivery effort, and then track it like that. So what status history gives you, and kind of what Ben and I talk about, is that it lets us see what happened with the order, so that we can discuss with you. Okay, what'd you really do that day? Your truck left at 6 o'clock, and then what? Did he come back in the middle of the day? Was it I didn't fit everything on the truck, so I had to go on the second time. Once we can kind of get that back and forth, then we can make the suggestion on how best to proceed with that kind of circumstance. And those circumstances are probably the 5 to 10% of your effort. Most of it is going to kind of fit some sort of a framework of I'm leaving, I'm doing all my deliveries that I had assigned to it, and I get back. It's just, and unfortunately, it's that kind of 5 or 10% that ultimately makes your data look interesting. Because if we don't get it correct from an operational standpoint up front, then we're going to have data compliance questions.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just my point is I don't think we have a tool available to us to really evaluate that at this point in time.
Yep, I will. I don't disagree with the map thing. I'm going to give you that. I think you got a tool. We just need to refine your skill a little bit, and we're going to do that too.
Okay. All right.
All right, Ben, what else we got?
All right, so the next one actually kind of leads into a lot of the stuff that we were just talking about. Okay, so we wanted to understand the costing information to figure out why what ultimately results in why are these why are the delivery costs related to these two orders blown, for lack of a better word. So let me just do a quick search so we can get over here, and I'm just going to show you what we find. Okay, so if I bring up that particular order, my overall delivery cost was $258 for the trip. But if I look at those orders, I've got some blown costs related to some of the data related to it. Okay, the short answer is the fact that again, I used order status history to kind of track down what was happening, but this order was scheduled and delivered multiple times over multiple days. And so let me just bring this over to you and kind of show you what I'm talking about at a status history level again to kind of determine that. Okay.
Ben, start at the top level first, because I want to show you status history, but just double click on it once, right?
Okay.
So the first thing to consider is your times right there on your trip. This is saying on the 17th you left at 12:30, you got back at 3:30. So if you go click on the order tab, anything that happens inside the order tab should be within that 3-hour time window. If it's not, then we're going to get funny data. Because you can't make an arrival at a delivery when it's outside of your trip window. Now, your trip window is 3 hours. When you click on the order tab, you're going to see it's actually different days. It shows us arriving the day before at 12:57 and then leaving after we got back on the 17th. So we've got some interesting information in there. Now, the reason that happens was because of this order at a point in time earlier than this particular trip was previously scheduled. So it was already assigned to a vehicle on the 16th. It got in its own arrival time. It's got its own deliver time, that sort of thing. So what we need is for you to understand that if you're going to have circumstances where, you go out with an order but it doesn't get delivered, we need you to kind of pre-clean the data so that it won't trip it up from its subsequent delivery effort. Does that make sense? The way I pick that out, looking at this screen, and I know I look at this all the time, so it's easy for me to pick out. But I see, hey, that arrival time is a 16. So that one jumps out at me because that is impossible. You're not going to have an arrival time on the 16th for a trip you did on the 17th. So I know right there I got to fix that. I also see that my delivery time was 3:42, and my truck says it got back at 3:30. So unless I'm driving back in time, by 12 minutes, also inaccurate. So I need the containing data to be accurate, and I'm okay with you modifying the data. So if 3:30 was right or a little bit off, and you need to make this 3:50, go ahead and make it 3:50. And then go into the order level and make sure you change your date, because maybe you just screwed up the date. Instead of 16th, it should have been the 17th. I'm okay with all of that. And one of the things that we are going to spend time on when we get into the next session that's more kind of small group focused is the compliance reports, because it spits this stuff out at you. And it says, hey, for this week, we got 2 pieces of data that need to be reviewed. And let's review those before we start running any of our reports. And then we can get into Ben's complicated status history talk, or we can just go to the next.
Or we can just skip over it.
My way is a little easier, but you can get to that same thing that I just kind of went through by looking at the status history. It's just you don't really have to, because all you need to know that, hey, something happened here. I don't really remember what happened here, but probably I screwed up and I didn't clear out that arrival time before my guy left on the 17th.
So do you think you think that arrival time was entered manually, or do you?
Nope, I believe you probably arrived on it on the 16th, and I can, he'll be able to show you where you arrived right there on the 16th. So, without knowing how this location does things exactly, this could be a circumstance where you've got one big order, and you didn't, chop it up into multiples, because it looks like you actually did it 2 or 3 times. Or you got there and they refused it, or somebody wasn't available, or something like that. So you had to go back a second time. That is late enough in the day where that's potentially the case. So somebody wasn't available, and that's perfectly fine. But when the guy comes back, if your driver comes back and there's paperwork that still has to go out or a change has to be made, then the best time to do that is right then and there. And if it was a case where the delivery didn't get completed, pull it out of the trip, clear out the times, and it's ready to go for tomorrow. If it's a case where you completed half of it, make a copy of it, schedule the -2 for tomorrow. And
so, like the screen that we're looking at right now, right? When I see there's certain items that in the third column that say DQ dispatching, or 801. Sorry,
801 dispatch. Yep. That's the user.
That was done. That's been done by the dispatcher, right? That status has been changed by the dispatcher.
Correct.
And the ones that are blank are the ones that were done automatically by the system.
Correct. So a lot of it. This is a good example of what you wouldn't want it to look like. The less of those kind of manuals, particularly the ones that always worry me, are the delivery edit and the edit trip. Those are the 2 that are most commonly screwed up by our users, and that's across all of our users, all of our customers. When people get into the edits, a lot of times they're doing it quickly, and so when there's more than 1 or 2 on a trip status history, then there's a good chance that there's going to be a compliance question with that order.
I mean, I'm looking at this order came in. Looks like it came in like June 4th.
Yep. Yeah, bounced around a bunch, didn't it? You had some 16, some 17, some 18, some
7
yesterday or today.
Goes up to July. Goes up to it goes up to yesterday.
Yep, and I don't live in a world where I don't believe that's possible. I know that you're going to have things that happen. one order is going to be a challenge. 2 orders are going to be a challenge. You're going to have, it's going to go into tomorrow or the next day or the next week, and it's going to be your headache. And that's we're going to deal with that. But we're just going to need you to be aware when you're looking at, particularly the deliveries and orders in the order grid, to within a couple of seconds to be able to see where that occurred. And it's really a quick process. I understand that I've lived in the application for years and years now, so I got a leg up on pretty much everybody. But if Ben closes this window, I can literally take a peek at this, and in half a second I see where my problem was. It's right there. It's those 16s. I can't have 16s in that column. And I don't even have to read it to see that I had the problem. I just glance down that row, and that jumps out at me. So those tips and kind of tricks that I use will be the things that we can kind of focus in on with our kind of breakout and smaller group meetings.
Okay. All right.
Okay. You want to talk about sticks, or
yeah,
yes or no? Okay. So map zones. Charlie kind of referenced it before. We've had a few other preliminary discussions about it. We do have the ability to use map zones, and they can be used in a handful of ways. Some of you guys right now, you're using your ship via to determine, how to indicate when things will be delivered where. Map zones can be used similar. Can be used from the combined order screen, where, one thing that Charlie kind of showed and mentioned was, I've got this where it's going to show me the other suggested orders. There's an option to turn it on so it's showing you other orders related to the map zone. If I put in a ticket here and it has a map zone assignment, it's going to show me other orders that haven't been scheduled related that are in that same map zone assignment. So it can help in that way. Can also use it, I think, Richard, one of the things, and correct me if I'm wrong, where you're kind of going with this is being able to see where you have overlapping delivery areas between locations. And the location who could best and most efficiently and cheapest make the delivery is not the one making the delivery. So we can come up with some tools again if we have map zones assigned to the orders to be able to kind of show where that overlapping delivery areas is, or where somebody's straight outside of that. What is their map zone, their areas to make deliveries. Ultimately, the map zones, the best way from a trend perspective is we have an importer. The importer can make those assignments based on the zip code from the orders or the city that those orders are being written against, and automatically assigns those map zones based on that structure.
Yeah, I don't think we want that. I mean, what we're looking for is to find out where trucks have been making deliveries to locations where we should have other yards probably making the delivery, right?
Right.
To reduce.
Yeah, that's basically what he's describing. So the map zone assignments are there, and they can be defined however you want to define them, but they will have location level assignment on them. So if location 1 has these 12 map zones and location 2 delivers into one of location 1's map zones, I've got a report that'll show you that information. So there's a couple of things map zones do for you. First, they give you visibility so that you've got a potential to make a better combination decision up front. So now I know, hey, these 4 orders are in the same general area. If it makes sense and I can fit them on the truck, let me get them together, on a single delivery. They also give you the kind of feedback of where you're consistently making your deliveries. So if you're starting to think about, all right, my transportation costs are getting a little higher, where are our delivery trends right now? And do I have to start charging a little bit more because I'm traveling more than I had in the past? That kind of stuff. And then the third is, kind of territory controls. Where can you, kind of draw some boundaries so that when you're making delivery decisions, you're making good ones. And the example that I like to talk to on that is, I've got a lot of customers, and the way a lot are compensated are based on what kind of material they're pushing. So if you sell the order and you wrote it up, you're making the delivery. And in a lot of cases, for a lot of people, that makes plenty of sense because it's how they're paid. But it's not always the best decision from a company perspective or from a corporate perspective. So if you start to get some feedback on it and you see, there's one particular location that he's just crazy in terms of the overhead that's being developed because of these out-of-zone deliveries, you can start to work on that and hopefully fine-tune it from a managerial perspective, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but so if I was to try to use map zones, how do I set it up?
There's a few ways. The easiest way are to kind of look at your delivery areas. So either the cities or the zip codes, or, get a map open. Let's draw some boundaries, and then we can set those. And I'm happy to work with you on doing it, for an area. Once they're in the importer, then the map zone assignment is automatic based on the order coming through.
So do I need to send you information on how to set up the map zone, or can I?
We've got a template that we can give you that kind of explains the setup, and then once we have the template back, we can automatically import it into the importer.
Okay.
What we should do, let's have you and I will get together and we'll have a little offline on map zones and how best to use them, and then if you've got somebody that you want to kind of pick as a test base or something like that, we can try 2 or 3 or 4 locations and see what you guys think.
Okay. All right. That'll work.
That sounds pretty awesome, and maybe we could kind of demonstrate how that worked on the next call. That sounds really neat.
You bet. Yeah.
All right. Moving on, Steven, what does it mean when there's an inactive status in the web portal as far as the status of the vehicle or device? Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, that means we have not received any GPS position or new GPS position data from it in 24 hours.
That is correct.
So it might be working correctly, but it hasn't transmitted any new position data to say that it's moved or anything. So either one of those would determine and get set as an inactive status for the truck.
And there's 2 different tabs. The GPS and the vehicle tracking tab. That's no movement inside of 24 hour. In the geofence tab, nothing uploaded today.
So does that mean? What does that mean? Well, I mean,
that means for which one? The second one or the first one?
Well, so no transmission, okay, received in over an hour. All right, I get that. So does that mean that it's not wired correctly, or does that mean what?
No, it just means it's not moving. The boxes are still talking to us, but we're not getting a recorded updated position. Because there's a status that the device goes into. It can go into a parked and it can go into an idle position status. So the way we represent those on our side is we either have a vehicle that's moving because it has a speed, it has a direction, it has a lat long, all of that. We have a vehicle that's not moving, which is basically based on a timer. So if we're in the same position for 5 minutes and up to a definable entity, in this case up to 2 hours, we're not moving. And then we've got an inactive status. And inactive means that you put it somewhere, you parked it, it's still talking to us, but it hasn't changed its position in more than 24 hours.
All right, so, but when I see the no transmission received in over 1 hour,
that's different. So you're looking at the older program. You're looking at the DQ delivery map program. And what he was doing, when we initially wrote the DQ delivery map program, we were using cell phone-based GPS tracking, we had Nextel partnership, Sprint partnership, that sort of thing. So it did GPS quite a bit differently than our GPS black boxes did, because it didn't have the intelligence that black boxes did, or the hardwired to the equipment or anything like that. So what we were looking for were some ways to kind of trigger you to show you that, hey, something is wrong with this particular device. And for most of our customers back then, it was because it was getting shut off. So we had not received information in over 1 hour. It was meant to say, hey, see if your guy still has his phone on, so we can track that delivery effort. Devices have been stopped for over 2 hours. What happened with the guy's device? Did it lose cell coverage, or that kind of thing. So those two in the GPS tracker, in the DQ delivery map, don't relate as well as the status updates that you get from the GPS tracking website.
Okay. All right, so in DQ delivery maps, I really shouldn't be going there to check on the status of my...
DQ delivery maps is good for, what's the position right now.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it doesn't have much value. It does, you can do a plot and a stock report and those kinds of things in there. And because people have used it for 10 years, a lot of folks still like that DQ delivery map tool. But all of our...
A lot of people do, yeah.
Yeah, but from a go-forward perspective, MapPoint no longer supports, or Microsoft no longer supports MapPoint, and they're not going to be developing it any longer. So all of our kind of focused development for GPS deliverables is going to be out in our GPS website and in our ODT View platform.
Okay.
And then number 9, it should be fixed. We did a bunch of stuff last night. There's a new version of the web portal out there that was released last night. I haven't seen any issues of the settings being lost at a user level, so that the columns and such are going away. If it happens or it occurs to anyone, if you can get to me instantly so that I can jump on top of that, because we think we found the bug, we fixed what was going on. I haven't seen it since, so I'm hoping it's gone for good. But I'll know that I'll be more comfortable knowing that after a few days of not having the issue reported.
Okay. So was it the issue? Was it an issue with things not being spread out across the servers? Like
yeah, correct. So we had, inside our cloud, we've got a number of servers acting as web server. And, it's kind of meant to spread out the load, because if we have several hundred users hitting one, that kind of thing.
Yep.
So when a user was logging into the system, sometimes it would go to one machine and sometimes it would go to another. Yep. And in between refreshes, it might also jump between machines. And the web config was different at one, so it was causing a bug with some of the user settings.
Okay.
So we got that cleaned up yesterday, did a full release update. You will actually see some newer things in the map that weren't there yesterday. So if you click around and like any of it, let me know. There's going to be a note that goes out shortly, if it hasn't gone out already, that kind of describes the updated features that were released as well.
Can you show me?
Yeah, Ben's going to log in right here, right?
Sure. Just for Richard.
That's a good sign. There's a new settings button here that allows you to thin out some of the initial visibility and columns there as well. The GPS and vehicle tracking tabs, they work similarly, but you can see as you move over to the right, there's a new message view tab that has some pretty cool features to it. If any of you are using the messaging component to get to the Garmin.
That's for Garmin's, you mean?
Yep. And we've got a write-up on that as well. That'll get sent out for users who utilize the Garmin messaging. There's a little pop-out option that we're still working on so that you can send quick messages to vehicles without moving out of the main message view page or the GPS tracking page, whatever you're living on. So we're trying to do a couple of things to make it a little bit easier to, not have to click around from tab to tab all the time to get what you're looking for.
Pretty much everybody goes into vehicle tracking. And
vehicle tracking is that's where you live? Okay.
That's where everybody lives, and if they can get there, then they're okay.
Okay. Is there a particular reason why, like, GPS tracking versus vehicle tracking?
I just think they like the information that you get from vehicle tracking, like
right.
without
having to hover, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I like the grid.
So you get the location information. You get is it moving? Is it not moving?
Yep. Okay.
Is it inactive?
Yep. I'm always interested because we hear both sides. Some live here, some live there. I'm always curious. What users are using which tools on that side.
Yeah, vehicle tracking is where everybody goes.
Okay. Was there anything else on our question list?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Ben, nothing on there? That was the last, number 9?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, rest of the group, anything else or things you'd like to see for next call?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Donnie at Valley Interior Products. And I'm wondering on the edit the delivery screen on the order type, can you pull a report by new construction single family homes?
Sure. Are you using load types for that?
Well, but I just seen that a while ago, and I've been asked to report how many new construction homes are being done.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if we start using that, how do you pull a report on that?
There's a bunch of our reports have granularity to load types or to order type specifications. So we need a point of order person to enter it correctly and accurately. But once it's in there, I can run you a report a number of different ways.
Okay.
Daily activity by type. There's probably 6 or 7. So I'm just going to add that question to the bottom of our list here, and then give you a couple suggestions on which one. What location are you out of?
I'm actually in Nashville, Bowling Green, Lexington, and Louisville.
Okay.
Can you make that field required per GMS subsidiary? So if Valley wants to require that load type, but Chaparral doesn't, can we change the software settings to require it so the users in Nashville have to enter in something and the users in Albuquerque don't?
Well, the attribute is actually defined at the SX level.
Okay.
So if we can do it there,
that would be at the trend level.
Yeah.
I got you. So we just have to set that up and trend for Valley, and also set up nothing at Chaparral, and we're good to go.
Yep.
Okay. Donnie, I could do something like that for you.
That'd be good. I appreciate that.
This is in Kirkland. I was wondering, is there a report we can run for vehicle utilization for each yard or for region?
You bet. There's about 16. Which one do you want to? And how are you kind of quantifying utilization? Is it based on the amount of weight you're associating to a vehicle? I mean, what would be your?
Oh, I'm looking for miles. Like I said, we have around 7 yards within 50 miles. We want to make sure that, some yards hold on to a truck saying, yeah, we're using it, but it's a backup while, there would be a truck down. I'm looking for something like that.
Which trucks are where and how much are they being used? Yes, absolutely. Yes. There's a couple of good ones. Ben's looking at productivity by truck. There's also a kind of a daily activity that you can run as a summary across your locations. And the easy way to do that is just to pick your locations with control down on the bottom where it's down here in this defined area. You just grab the 4 or the 5 that you want and then pick your date range. You don't really need to worry about the status side because it's just going to look to utilization at a trip level. So once you run that report, you'll get a couple of different tools. The best for that, I'd probably have to go through and look through some of these, but this productivity by truck by day is probably a good one because it does summarize all the activity for a given set of vehicles. So that's probably your best bet to start. There is another one here. Let's see. I used to memorize all of our reports. I don't do that anymore. I ran out of space. Productivity by truck daily. I'll go through a couple and I'll kind of add that to the notes here to make a suggestion. And then, like I said before, if I give you a report and it's a little bit messier or you want something that's just a little bit cleaner, let me know, and we can work with you on the exact deliverable.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Bet. All right. Anybody else?
I was going to just add at the bottom of the list that you're looking at right now, there's a report by state, I think. There's
the state mileage, yeah?
State mileage.
Yep.
And, that's kind of a nice one that gives you mileage per state, right? So even if you're operating in the same state all the time, it still gives you good information, I think, that might be helpful. So,
yep. It's also, if you're not using it today for your people who are filing your fuel tax reports, it's also very helpful for that as well.
Yeah. I'm good. Anybody else got anything that they want to ask right now, or are we okay?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
This has been all right, so I'm going to kind of summarize, just kind of message to the whole group. Any questions that come out of that, feel free to just shoot them on in so we can kind of consolidate and live off of that. And then Richard and I'll get back together with the next meeting so we can start putting out a request for questions and a little more focused examination that's going to dive into the smaller group assessments with that next setup of calls. So I appreciate everybody's time today. I did get close to the 2 hours. Thanks for everybody's attention, and I look forward to working with you moving forward.
All right. Thanks.
And Charlie, thank you.
Thanks.
Have a good day, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.